Hello. Okay, right. So this video is all about the target audience for Netflix as a media product, okay, as a platform. It probably also cascades down and talks about the target audience for all of the shows that Netflix either make themselves, the Netflix originals, or at least host in their library. You can probably assume that if any media product aligns itself with another media product, that they would at least expect to share similar brand values and will probably target similar groups of people. Okay, so the first thing we will look at is the primary age bracket, the ideal target audience. If we are saying you, we want to target you, this is the ideal target audience in respect to age bracket. Okay, we're probably looking at 18 plus. Okay, because of the focus on the crime genre. A lot of Netflix narratives, both fictional and the documentaries, which are based on true stories, focus heavily on murder and homicide and whodunits and serial killers. Okay, there is quite a trend developing there already. So dark themes, and in the instance of perhaps some of the dramas, dark humor. So 18 plus in that respect. We can probably also group 18 to 35-year-olds who are probably able to understand non-linear narratives, okay, enigma codes, mysteries. They might be interested in conspiracy theories and documentaries that explore whether or not that thing happened or not, okay, and the whodunits, okay, making a murderer, for example. Even a lot of their dramas now focus on serial killers, okay, The Stranger, for example. 18 to 35-year-olds, we can probably acknowledge, have a 9 to 5 working lifestyle. They might crave escapism when they come in from a long day's work. They might want something that they can then binge, okay, the must-watch shows that everybody's talking about, so that they can go back to work the next day at 9 o'clock and talk about it, okay? So that's perhaps a bracket of 18 to 35-year-olds, but more crucially, the why fors, the reasons why those individuals would crave those things, okay? Primary gender split. In respect to the crime genre we've already mentioned, the dramas, the documentaries such as Making a Murderer, probably a ratio in favour of males. And you know, when we do this, we are being stereotypical, and we should maybe find articles online to cite these generalizations. Okay, perhaps 60 to 40, 70 30 in favour of males, probably because there's usually a passive female victim in these narratives. There's usually a male protagonist in these narratives. There are definitely instances of hypermasculinity, okay? Violence, action, objectification of females, and again, the dark humor that we mentioned. However, we can probably talk about Netflix having a range of different shows that fall outside that crime genre we should also talk about. So perhaps in respect to gender split, there may be a secondary gender split when we look at dramas such as Orange is the New Black, How to Get Away with Murder, and the later seasons in particular of House of Cards. Maybe at this point we need to acknowledge a ratio in favour of females, because there are then strong female, countertypical female characters. Okay, star power is maybe then often used in that respect for personal identity, maybe. Perhaps the personal identity might come from the fact that these characters are not sexually objectified or passive in the way that they have been in the past. They are not your traditional Propian princess. There's a link there for you to have a look at for when you are citing perhaps evidence to justify some of the generalized comments we might make, which might appear to be stereotypical if unsupported. Okay. There's perhaps another gender split we could talk about when we look at reality TV, of which Netflix still feature. It doesn't have to be the live Saturday night entertainment like ITV in respect to reality TV. There are still reality TV shows which you can binge on Netflix, such as The Circle, Love is Blind. I don't watch these shows, but I'm told that's what they're called. And perhaps again, stereotypically, we are maybe looking at a ratio in favour of females when the narratives focus more on gossip, fashion, mainstream trends, okay, materialistic, and perhaps superficial. We probably again need to support this with statistics and sources to avoid appearing too stereotypical and vague with unsupported statements. Okay, so that's maybe a subcategory, a couple of paragraphs underneath your secondary gender split section. There's maybe also a secondary age bracket, a group of people who perhaps we are not targeting specifically, like we are with the 18 to 35-year-olds, that as a bonus, we're certainly not going to say, well, no, you can't watch our shows, okay? We're probably going to be quite happy that they are, but we're not specifically targeting them. And maybe we're looking now at a 15 to 17-year-old. 15-year-olds, perhaps procrastination. They want something to do. They want something to avoid schoolwork. Maybe 16 to 17-year-olds may be interested in popular culture and memes and mainstream trends, which might be current and fashionable and popular, that they might want to talk about and be involved in, particularly on social media. There's also a lot of coming of age narratives, stories that focus on young people and the issues that they might face. Sex education, for example, is perhaps a good one. So that's a secondary age bracket we could talk about, and maybe there's a paragraph or two there. Okay, so that's age and gender, demographics, okay, and again, generalized stereotypical assumptions. Okay, we can probably also talk about economics, okay, the financial implications on a group of people. We've already talked about ABC1 audience members, okay, but we can talk about them perhaps in two particular capacities. One, their disposable income. But how do they have disposable income? How does one get disposable income? Okay, we can probably assume that ABC1 audience members are educated. Okay, their position in society would probably assume that they have a decent education, and that will probably mean they've got a better job. That then leads to disposable income. That means they can afford to pay for things that are non-essential, not food, not rent. Okay, but they can probably also pay for multiple streaming services. They'll probably have Netflix and Disney Plus and maybe Amazon Prime, and technologically convergent devices, a smartphone, a tablet, an iPad, okay, maybe even smart TVs and home cinemas, okay. So they've got this money to invest in their entertainment sources, okay, and they have so because of disposable income. Another thing we can talk about in respect to ABC1 audience members being educated is that they're likely to be able to understand non-linear subverted narratives, okay? Things with flashbacks, flash forwards, timelines that don't run at the same time. And maybe one character's storyline is set in the past and one character's storyline is set in the future, but they appear to be occurring at the same time, and we don't find out till the finale or something like that, okay? Enigma codes, questions that simply don't get answered until the finale, if even then. Maybe a finale might have more questions that keep you going. A cliffhanger over hiatus, for example, between seasons. But the reason why that's important is that ABC1 audience members like to solve Enigma codes. I'm sure you've nudged someone beside you and said, I know what's going to happen next. It was him, she did it, or I bet this happens next, or I told you that was going to happen, because it's rewarding. You get a sense of achievement at the end, okay? ABC1 audience members, because of their education, can recognize references to other shows. This is referred to as intertextuality. We've probably come across this term before, okay, but it's just basically intertext. It's a text that refers another text, a text in a text, okay. So if you've got a reference to, I don't know, Game of Thrones, which occurred in Westworld in episode 3, for example, then you go, Game of Thrones, okay? So then you kind of like reward yourself by giving yourself a pat on the back by, I understood that, I got that, okay? And that comes perhaps from your awareness and your education and your ability to solve the problems and notice things that might be subtly planted into the narrative. And again, because of their education and because of their job, they're likely to have a lifestyle that will probably encourage escapism. They'll want to come in at the end of a long, hard day and binge something. Okay. So that's something else that I think we should be talking about. Okay. The last thing to talk about, as we normally do, is the Young and Rubicon psychographics. There's a couple more that you could probably talk about, but in particular, the Explorer. Again, they're going to like the whodunits, the mysteries. They're going to like Enigma code, something to explore, something to find out, something to pay attention to, something to investigate, perhaps. Sci-fi narratives such as Stranger Things. They are going to like to be able to escape from a boring life and pretend that they might be able to go off into another universe or parallel world, or dream state, or something that is going to allow them to explore, obviously. Okay. Mainstream psychographics are just going to follow the trends. They're going to watch it because everybody else is watching it, and they're going to. Is that right? And then they're going to do so because everybody else is watching it, so that they can go to work the next day and talk about it and be popular and not be missed out of the conversation. The struggler, the resigned, might find personal identity in a troubled character from the narrative. So if there's someone they relate to who might also be anxious or being bullied or perhaps down on their luck or perhaps going through some sort of emotional trauma, perhaps a breakup or a coming out story, they may well then have personal identity with that character, and the struggler or the resigned might be interested in those types of shows as a result of that. Okay, there is a paragraph at the end, ish, in terms of a exemplar answer, where I've squeezed a lot of those words into one paragraph. I'd probably expect you to be able to make a sentence or two on each of the bullets. Okay, referencing a particular text where necessary. I know that's an info dump. Apologies for just throwing all that at you. The logic behind this video is that you can use it to check your answers and pause it and skip it and go backwards and forwards, and come back to it at a later date. Come back to it in a future unit. Come back to it for revision. Okay, and obviously it will go on the Google site for reference. Okay, thank you.